Stéphanie. Bonjour.
Bonjour Stéphane.
Bonjour.
Bonjour Stéphane.
Nicolas.
Bonjour.
Nicolas.
Bonjour.
Nicolas.
Alessandro.
Jean.
Enchanté, Jean.
Ça, c'est pour les intimes.
Oh, les intimes, bon, ça commence bien ici.
C'est les lettres.
Ah.
Est-ce que vous avez français en anglais ou français?
En anglais, c'est ça.
Each team has 24 minutes to present its case to the judge. The time of presentation will also be divided. The first 12 minutes of the presentation are considered as being protected, meaning that the judges cannot interrupt the team. The next 10 minutes are non-protected. The beginning of this period will be when the light turn on. When the non-protected period will end, I will turn off the light. The judges have the possibility of interrupting the presentation in order to ask questions of clarification of the subject presented at this moment. The judge will have to limit himself to 15 seconds to ask his question. The team has to answer the question, but can continue its presentation without waiting for the agreement of the judge. The judges cannot ask questions on a subject having already been covered or which has not been presented yet. This question must be approached during the period of questions at the end of the presentation. The last 2 minutes of the presentation are meant to conclude the presentation and are shielded from question of the judge. I will show boards showing the remaining time when there will be 12 minutes, 7 minutes, 2 minutes, and 30 seconds left, and will make the countdown at the last 10 seconds by using my hands. A period of question of a maximum duration of 5 minutes is assigned to the jury at the end of the presentation. I would like to remind the judges that it is mandatory to ask at least one question during this period. I will invite the judge to introduce himself and then the team can begin.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Lapin. I'm Director of Production of EPM.
My name is Arvid. I've been involved in international business for most of my career. I've also been lecturing at the University of in international business, finance and management.
Hi, my name is Stéphane Agnel, R&D Director of APN. Hi, my name is Joël Lessard, Director of Continuous Improvement at APN.
My name is Nicolas Gagnon, Business Development at Expo.
Enchantée, Joël. La mondialisation est un phénomène qui affecte toute entreprise aujourd'hui. Ces entreprises ont l'opportunité de saisir cette expansion globale et d'apprendre beaucoup à travers une expansion à l'international. Aujourd'hui, nous croyons que votre compagnie, APM, à travers la perfection dans tout ce qu'elle entreprend, a le pouvoir d'accroître ses revenus à travers une expansion internationale. Bonjour, mon nom est Marie-Ève et mes collègues, je vous présente mes collègues Alessandro et Daniel. Aujourd'hui, en ce qui a trait à la présentation, on va poursuivre ça en anglais. Si vous avez des questions, soyez bien à votre aise à les poser soit en français ou en anglais, puis je vais pouvoir m'occuper de faire la traduction pour mes collègues ici. Donc, sans plus tarder, on va commencer la présentation. Donc, premièrement, the agenda for today. So, first of all, we're going to discuss about your company, APN. And then, we're going to go over an industrial and geographical analysis. So, we're going to go over the industry and the trends, and also over into what markets do you operate. After, we will present to you our strategy, which is the buy, learn, and expand strategy. After that, we will discuss the diversification opportunity that your enterprise is facing. Finally, we're going to go over the impacts and risks of our strategy. We're going to present to you our plan of action, the implementation of our strategy, and finally, we're going to finish with the key takeaways. So the mandate that was given to us by your company today was basically to evaluate the potential opportunities in different geographic markets as well as different industries. So first of all, if we go over an overview of your company, as we read in the case, APN is strongly focused on the specific, methodical, and consistent model. So the 4 main points that we found out about your company that was really important is, first of all, to focus on major customers. So basically, if you focus on such customers, you're going to be able to achieve better revenues in the long run. Also, your company is incredibly focused on perfection. Whether it's about recruiting employees, you always search for top talents. But also, your products are extraordinary. Your products are the best quality and meet extremely high standards in the industry. APN is also strong on the financial health, so it's very important to have good margins, whatever strategy that is taken. And finally, it's very important to invest into R&D, as your company is in an industry that is evolving really fast. It needs to innovate constantly. So if we go over a geographical overview, the 3 main countries that we thought were the most important for this presentation today and for a strategy was, first of all, to mention your presence in Canada. It's a Quebec company, and you have your offices are set in the Technology Park of Quebec, where you manage your production abroad, which is very successful. You also have extremely successful acquisition in the United States, in California, and this allowed your company to go into diversification. So it allowed you to go into the military sector, the aerospace sector, and the medical sector. And finally, Europe is quite interesting because you have already a partnership with a French company, and Europe may represent a market of $5 to $6 million, which could represent a good opportunity for you. So the opportunity statement for today, we believe that by expanding into the Middle East and diversifying our business offerings, we believe that we will be able to achieve more than 20% yearly growth, while at the same time reaching all of the APN's SMAT and maintaining its stellar reputation of perfection. So I will now pass it on to my colleague Ale, who will pursue with the industry analysis.
All right, so I'm going to talk about different aircraft clusters that we find around the world and see where APN fits into this, or where APN could potentially grow into this. So I looked at Russia a bit, and we found out that it's quite established with its manufacturing, the aircraft industry, and this means that there wouldn't be much potential to grow. And there's also trade restrictions right now with Russia, which would be very problematic in a business setting. And also it's a shrinking economy. It went from 2010 billion in 2012 to short of 1,800 billion in 2014. So this is not really a market that we would like to enter. Going into Europe, as Marie-Ève said before, you already are established in a French company. And Europe is a big hub for aircraft and for manufacturing aircraft parts. As we know, Airbus is based in Toulouse, and then there's also a very big hub in Hamburg. But also these are very big fish that we do not recommend APN to just get involved within yet. On the other hand, we have the US, which are very successful with the military, and you have a lot of market strength there, but also we're considering commercial aircraft and commercial aircraft manufacturers such as Boeing that we don't think you should get involved within yet. And there's more opportunity growths in markets like the Middle East. So the Middle East, what we want to focus on is GCC countries, Gulf Cooperation Council countries, which include countries like Bahrain, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Oman, etc. They have a lot of air shows in these countries. And these air shows are just collections of different companies that come and present their innovations. And they're really interesting. I actually went to the Bahrain Air Show a couple of years ago, and there's so many companies and so many innovations that everyone could really learn from, and there's partnerships that really grow from there. Other air shows include the Dubai Air Show and the Abu Dhabi Expo. And we really believe that all of these companies coming together to these air shows could create many synergies. Also, we all know that the commercial aircraft business in here is very successful. We have Qatar Airways, we have Etihad, and we have Emirates. They're all very successful companies. And we really believe that geographical growth could really spur from expanding in the Middle East.
So, taking all that information into consideration, we did a further geographical analysis of the Middle East region because we believe that it actually is beneficial for the growth of APN. So looking at some of the statistics, on average in the GCC, there's been a compounded annual growth rate average of 3% per year, which we believe is actually considered high in the economic climate. They have low taxes. For example, in Qatar, there are 0% taxes, so as a venture, it actually is quite profitable. And with regards to military expenditures, GCC countries on average have a 5% military expenditure of their total GDP, meaning on average they spend a lot of their GDP on the military because of the region that they're located in. Furthermore, the GCC has a total GDP of $1 trillion, showing us that there's a full market for APN to expand there. And looking at some of the potential, we see obviously that there's high defense spending. The GCC region is sometimes considered a region that is very volatile, for example, the rise of ISIS. So we believe, and for example, in a sense, the political instability of the GCC region could in fact be an advantage to APN being in the region because furthermore, more countries will be spending more in the military, and that could further and increase the demand for your types of products. On top of that, we believe there's an increasingly educated young population located in the Middle East, which we believe will will work with your strategy of acquiring the best talent. And on top of that, they have resistance to regional and global downturns. In the 2008 recession, the GCC countries came out relatively unscathed. So, part of the recommendation that we are giving you today is twofold. So the first part is how you can grow your core competency, which is kind of the military and airplane parts, which accompanies 50% of your revenues. But on top of that, we also want to diversify your product mix. So the first part of our recommendation is our buy, learn, and expand campaign. So the first thing what we want you to do is we want you to buy one manufacturer, we want you to acquire one factory in the country of Qatar. The reason that we picked Qatar is because of their ease of doing business, and we believe that it's a good country to put your foot in the water, just as you did in France when you tried to get into the European market. We want you to acquire a manufacturer in Qatar, as well as before that, we want you to research potential manufacturers to acquire. Once you found one that is at the right price and one that works and has the suitable perfection that you guys seek to strive, we believe you should acquire them. Then, we believe that it takes time to implement APN's highest perfection standards onto this manufacturer that you buy. That takes time, and that's part of our recommendation. And finally, encompassing everything about the buy, part of our strategy, we want you to take advantage of taxes in the business environment that is part of Qatar. So, once you get your foot into the water, we want you to start learning about Qatar and the entire GCC. We want you to take data on the market. In the case, it said you have huge resources to collect data and process it and actually make better decisions from it. So we want you to start doing that from the Qatar factory that you buy. Then we want you to learn the business environment, and we want you to do that by creating relationships and hiring more talent and learning about the market and meeting people. And just by taking your time to do that, you will learn so much more about how to operate in other GCC countries. On top of that, you have to recruit potential talent that fit your need for the highest potential. And then I'll pass it on to Ali for the final part of our strategy, which is expand.
All right, so as Daniel said, we would like to expand, we would like to buy, learn, and then potentially expand further into GCC countries, which is the Gulf Cooperation Council. So we were thinking of, after setting our foot in Qatar and actually building relationships and acquiring different companies, starting with one and then building it up, we're thinking of then moving into UAE and Saudi Arabia. UAE, because as I said before, the Dubai Air Show and the Abu Dhabi Expo, all of these really make it a very interesting location for us to expand in. In Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, it's more on the military side, so what you're very familiar with. Saudi Arabia actually spends a lot of money on military, which would be a very attractive solution. So an acquisition example would be this company called Mezzo, which is based in Doha, in Qatar. So Mezzo actually provides solutions to oil and gas companies, but they also have they also provide mechanical parts. And this would really fit in with your strategy because in France, you actually had the same strategy, which would be to put your foot into a new region and then learn from it, and then maybe expand a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. There will also be a lot of partnerships and synergies, so you could really learn from a company like Mezzo in Qatar and maybe expand a bit more from there. Now, we pass on to our second recommendation, which we really found was really important, not only for us, but also for you as a company. So we really believe that a company nowadays should really diversify itself. There are so many opportunities around the world, and a company should also continue to innovate to stay alive. So our diversification opportunity includes your new software that you just developed, which would be the component of the Internet of Objects. So let me talk about the Internet of Things. So I find it personally really interesting. For example, there was a bridge that was once built and it would keep falling and it would keep cracking. But with the Internet of Things, they would put some sensors in this bridge and it would monitor the cracks that would be caused by weather, by tearing, and these cracks would be monitored and then dealt with very quickly. So this is the Internet of Things. It's practically just putting internet into everything and making everything come together. So I'm just going to talk about the Montreal cluster of the Internet of Things. There are many companies in Montreal that do a lot of Internet of Things with their technology. So for example, there's this company called Smartify, and they use Wi-Fi to monitor inside a house all the movements of a person. So for example, I could put my hand up like this, and it would sense it and monitor it, and I could maybe wave it and it would turn on a light. It could monitor your dog running from one room to the other, and then monitor, for example, its movements or whether it's safe, or for more reasons, security. So whoever enters your house, your movements, and if your movements don't correspond, then it will alert the police. So this is a very smart company. It's a startup in Montreal, and we really believe that something like this is something that you could grow from with your new software. So what we were thinking is to have a small business unit come from your APN company, and the small cluster of people that created this software could then be moved and have autonomy, creativity, and talent in a small business unit, which would then grow this company a bit more. They would have full autonomy, which means that they would operate on their own. They would have a lot of creativity doing that because they would hire new talent from the Montreal cluster market. And this would create this new innovation that we feel is really important, not just for us, but also for you. So now I'm going to pass it on to Daniel for the financial impact.
So, the financial impact of our strategy. In the first year, we're going to buy that one factory in Qatar, but after that, in the next 5 years, we want you to purchase 10 more factories. We believe, using the assumptions that all factories kind of deliver same revenues as the ones that you purchased in San Diego, which is about 2.8 million per year on the first year, with the growth of fourfold. In the San Diego factories, over 5 years, you grew threefold. But we believe you can actually grow fourfold because of the increased growth opportunities in the GCC region. With that, we believe over 5 years, you can increase your revenues by $112 million over 5 years. So, we believe our recommendation is great.
Your expectation is that this first company that we can buy at 2.8 million will give us around 12 million of revenue.
No, excuse me, $2.8 million is the revenue in the first year.
Okay. So what kind of price do you expect in the GCC region?
Doing our research, it's hard to kind of pinpoint the exact price of a factory that you'd buy, but some of the ranges of cost that we found were from $10 to $20 million.
Okay, thank you.
So, now we believe our strategy is very strong, but some of the risk, but there are risks, and here are some of the mitigants that we believe that will help us overcome them. So the first risk is that there are cultural differences between North America and the GCC. We believe the way to kind of mitigate that is to hire appropriate talent and create relationships where you can see through that and you can learn how to deal with it. And we believe that's the best way deal with that. Then there are sometimes government difficulties in countries like Qatar and the GCC, where there perhaps can be regime change or even changing of laws because it's a sometimes volatile region. And we believe that we are mitigating that risk by diversifying our offering with the 4.0 technology and hedging our risk. And then, because the GCC is an oil-dependent economy, the other way to kind of get rid of that risk is we are going to increase international acquisitions of factories around the world. For example, our contingency plan is to increase in Europe further. So now I'll pass it on to Mary-Eve with our implementation strategy.
Thank you, Daniel. So moving on to the implementation strategy. First, what we want you to do tomorrow is to research the market and the manufacturers in Qatar. Another thing that is really important is that you learn how business is done in Qatar and that you learn more about the regulation. It's also important to start preparing the acquisition document. Within the 1 year period, the acquisition should be done. Then you could attract skillful employees that come from the Middle East. And finally, what is really important during this implementation is that you maintain your high quality standards. After 2 years, if the acquisition in Qatar is successful, it will be important to start researching other participants in the Middle East, other companies that you could purchase in order to further diversify your portfolio and increase your revenues internationally. So we believe that the expansion in the Middle East countries within the 2 year period would be the appropriate implementation. So it's very important here to take into consideration the key performance indicators. These will allow us to determine if the strategy is successful or not. So first of all, we want to ensure a 20% revenue growth, as you mentioned in the case, because this is really important for your company, and we believe that this is also a key indicator for the success of APN. We also think that diversification is something that we must found out of the strategy from the Middle East. Diversification, as it has been mentioned, will allow better security for the long-term performance of the company. And finally, one thing that is very important, your company is highly focused on perfection. So you have to maintain those high quality standards. So if the expansion into the Middle East doesn't allow all of these things, then we have prepared a contingency plan. So this contingency plan would be to go into Europe. So that would be given that the Middle East expansion is not as successful as it was predicted. So in Europe, you already have a partnership with a company there. So you could easily leverage that partnership with the company Excel Carville. And this could allow you to reach the aircraft cluster in especially Toulouse in France. So there they have their Airbus, and reaching such clusters would allow the company to reach global expansion easily through the Airbus cluster. So the key takeaways for today's presentation, first of all, it's very important that this expansion is profitable. This is the main reason why we want to go to the Middle East, and we want the company to have long-term success and to increase their revenues as much as possible. As we also mentioned, we believe that diversification will ensure financial stability in the long run, and as we know, diversified portfolios always allow an increased growth and a stable growth in the long run. And finally, another thing that is important from today's presentation is to maintain the reputation. You have an amazing reputation with high quality products that all your customers believe in this company, and this is really important to maintain this reputation. So we will now open the floor to any questions that you might have.
Of course. I have one. Okay. I definitely love the buy and sell approach, okay? I'm not convinced about the GCC, but I appreciate your framework very much. Diversification, you nailed it right. Expand in Europe, okay? In another, what about another market than aerospace in Europe? That's my question. What about medical? We know that our business in the US opened us to medical. What about that?
So again, kind of our strategy around the Middle East, it's not necessarily that close to the Middle East, but Pakistan has this cluster that is really successful about medical instruments. So the Middle East would allow you to get used to the regulation that are in place there, and you could also access those clusters that are in the different, that region.
If I give you a big stick, and you mentioned big fish, what about Europe? Other than aircraft? It's a no?
Well, we strongly believe that the Middle East was more attractive because of the regulation. The regulation there, the taxes, there's no taxes. It's so much easier to build a company and to acquire a company in such region. And we also believe that this region has more growth opportunity because as we've seen, the GDP per capita has been growing increasingly faster. So we think that Europe is good. It's a good plan, but we think that the Middle East would be more advantageous right now because you have to seize this opportunity and this trend that we're seeing right now in this region.
And to further add a different viewpoint to what Marie-Ève said, in certain cases, the business environment in the Middle East is in Europe is actually sometimes difficult to deal with. There are high taxes, and there's actually a huge debt crisis in Europe going on right now, and lower demand for perhaps planes like Airbus. So we think it might have been a better idea to expand into the Middle East and put all our resources there.
Thank you.
I'm very impressed by your presentation in terms of focusing on the profitability and diversification of risk as opposed to growth in sales per se.
Mm-hmm.
My question goes to you about, you were talking about Qatar or... Okay. My question is directed this. I want to ask you this point.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think that these people around me would have to go and work over there because they're the very wealthy people? There are some people from the Philippines, from India, from Indonesia. So the people who should be responsible for doing the work are these people around me, or the same color, I would say.
Well, I've actually lived in Bahrain for 4 years, so Bahrain is right close to Qatar. So I know exactly.
Let's say Bahrain. Okay.
Yes, let's say Bahrain. So I know exactly what you mean. There is a very high inequality in those countries, and there are different people there. But also, the Middle East right now is also very globalized. We don't only look in. I would say the example Bahrain, but we're looking at Doha. And Doha is actually a very international place. And so is Dubai, and so is Abu Dhabi. So all these places are actually very international, and they actually have good infrastructure and good workers from all over the world, from the UK especially, because they were colonies before from the UK. And they're very competent, they're very talented. And I've lived there for 4 years, and I know exactly what you mean, but in the end, they're very globalized.
If you're British, good luck for you. Good luck to you.
Oh, I'm actually Italian, but like there have been.
If it's not working with if it's not working with Metso, what kind of industry we need to looking for? More military, aerospace?
Yeah, because of the high military spending per GDP in the GCC region, we believe that there's a high potential for military. So
we need to focus on the
we're
size
focusing
of
on
the
military.
company.
Of the manufacturing company that we're trying to buy?
Looking for?
Well, I think it varies, and so there's many types of factories and varying in size, but I think APN deals best with factories that have high perfection standards, as that's part of your mandate and part of what you love to do and have a high reputation. So in some sense, it actually may be better for you guys to purchase smaller factories, as this might be easier to control the perfection of and standards of those types of factories.
If you're going to go to the Middle East, which country would you choose? I mean, which city, I should say.
City.
Yeah.
For your strategy, I would say Doha, as we said, because it's very international. But I would really recommend the UAE.
La
Big-
période de questions est terminée.
Oh.
Congratulations.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good job.
Great pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Good job.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.